migration story is and what we do at the migration story, and how we try and cover stories at the intersection of climate change, livelihood, gender, etc.
Like, what strategies do you use to ensure that your reporting reaches and resonates with the communities?
Oh, yeah, that's an important question. One of our endeavors has been to get our stories translated and getting them published on other sites.
Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to introduce Roli Srivastava, a Mumbai-based journalist and founder of Migration Story, a news platform that focuses on climate change, just transition, gender, and migration, with an emphasis on India's marginalized communities. Roli has an extensive background in journalism, including roles as climate and just transition correspondent for Thomson Reuters Foundation, and she has also been editor at The Hindu and editor of special projects at TOI. So this session will help us to recognize the importance of collaborative journalism and how to integrate the voices of migrants into journalistic stories, ensuring ethical, professional, and in-depth reporting. We are so lucky to have her here with us today, and I'm excited for everyone to learn from her insights and experiences. Roli, over to you.
Thanks so much, Alia, for having me for this session. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'll just start with what the migration story is and what we do at the migration story, and how we try and cover stories at the intersection of climate change, livelihood, gender, etc. So the migration story, we just completed a year actually in January this year. We launched, my fellow climate journalist, Anuradha Nagaraj, and we both launched the migration story on 7th January 2024. It is India's first newsroom that's dedicatedly telling stories of the country's vast migrant population, mainly through the lens of climate change and energy transition, among other themes. Now, when I say climate change and energy transition as our two key lenses, that's because during the course of several reporting trips, which both Anuradha and I undertook for our climate reporting, when we were doing our stories, uh, harsh weather, unpredictable rain, all of these elements weighing on livelihoods was a running theme across several stories. The story could be about anything, but why people were migrating was often because of failed agriculture, and which led us to kind of believe that there is a bigger story out there, and it's not just about people moving from place A to place B. It's about the push factors that need to be documented so that these conversations enter the mainstream. It's not, migration has been going on for decades. It's not something that's happened in the last 5 years or 10 years or whatever. We all know that. But the factors influencing the decision to migrate, they have possibly they have possibly undergone a shift over the years. And climate shifts is one of the key reasons that we see as playing a crucial role in this decision making, that we need an alternate source of livelihood because farming is no longer paying as much. Now, that also brings me to the kind of stories that we have documented, we have reported on our platform. Aishwarya is here on the call, and she herself has contributed stories to the migration story that have looked at this aspect. And we tell stories which are, so how do you examine a push factor? That if imagine all stories being that the crops have failed and so we migrated. Not all stories can't be, they can't be the same. There are many layers to every story that all of us know. When we all are working on stories, when we start speaking to people, there are layers and layers that start peeling themselves when with each conversation. And that's how we've done, for example, if I'll kind of break this into three parts. One is the source kind of stories, that where are the people migrating from? and how do we use the climate and energy transition lens. So one is the climate lens, people migrating. One was, of course, a socio-economic impact story, which I wanted to highlight, which Aishwarya had done on this village in coastal Odisha, which had not seen a wedding in over a decade. And why had it not seen a wedding was because, is all okay, Alia? Do I
Yeah,
continue?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, please.
Okay. It had not seen a wedding because of a cyclone several years ago, which had hit farming, which had turned water saline. And the everyone knew that this, if you get married to this village, you'll possibly be trekking for hours to fetch water. And it wasn't a proposition that attracted many women to enter this village, and which led to, like, there was no wedding in that village, what Aishwarya found, and which led to men migrating, not just for jobs, but also to find a bride, maybe hoping that they might find a bride. And then they were in their destination cities, and like it's not so easy because they weren't earning as much. They were sending money back home and all that. So here was a story which was at the intersection of climate change, like the frequency of cyclones that have gone up. How has it impacted farming in a coastal region? And then the socioeconomic impact, then the outcome that people are migrating, and how the hardship of it all doesn't end just with migration. It's only like another shifting the problem from A to B. You are still struggling, you're still not earning enough, you're still not sure whether you'll find a partner or anything because you're still sending a lot of money back home. So it kind of checked all those boxes. Wherein we are looking again, it's like failed farms in a, if you were to see it from a, like, if you zoom out, what's the story? Failed farms, no jobs, nothing, like unfueled migration. But it went deeper and found out, okay, there's another socio-economic, there's a social impact of it. Then there's another story that I'll point out, which is also about a village from where there's been a lot of migration. But why? It's a drought-prone village in Rajasthan. And there's been a lot of out migration. It's been a drought riddled area. There've been no crops for years or whatever. And then what do you do? So, this community, and it was an inspiring community to meet, this community decided that whenever it rains, now it's unpredictable rainfall, but whenever it rains, let's arrest the rainwater runoff. All that the village did was it built a wall, a kacha wall. It was a mud structure, but they built a wall, and to arrest the rainwater, and they dug trenches below the wall, channeling that the trenches uh, would collect the water and channel it to the farms. That was the big idea. Then suddenly it rained one day when the wall construction was still going on, and the wall collapsed. But then the villagers were determined, and this was without a non-profit, without a government agency. And they thought, let's do it again. They did it again, and they built the wall. The rainwater was indeed arrested. Rainwater did enter the farms. The groundwater level did get recharged, and a few migrants have started returning to that village. So here again was a drought story, failed farms, whatever, but community spirit, community enterprise. What is an individual community trying to do over there? So we are checking those. So when we say how do we explore migration through climate or gender or whatever, so it's one is that when we go on the field, when we see distress because of which there has been out migration, people have left their village to for a city or to earn a living. One is to document the push factors, that how that has changed. But that cannot, we are all journalists and we all have to make our stories. Stories, they have to be interesting stories, and they need to, and for that, they need to be nuanced. And which is where, like, spending time with the people we are speaking to understand what happened after that. So there's been a crisis, there's a climate crisis. We are all aware of that. We just recorded the hottest year last year. So the climate crisis is here to stay. But okay, that's not the beginning and not the end of the story. There's more to it. And particularly when we visit rural areas, they do lend themselves to a far greater, far more finer forms of storytelling, because there are more nuanced observations that emerge from rural parts, because they also feel the unequal burden of climate shifts. In urban areas, a lot of people, again, I'll come to the marginalized section of migrant community. How do we cover them in stories in a bit? But why do I say rural India faces an unequal burden? One is its dependence on agriculture. In cities, there are several other sectors, but we haven't started imagining industrial sectors for rural India as in diversification of livelihood options. There is little diversification of livelihood options so far. So, in the absence of that, the impact of a climate crisis will be felt by them in terms of their earnings. They will be impacted. In a city, there'll still be an option, may not be a great option, but if not construction, you might pick up another job or something if you're a migrant worker. As a farm laborer, if you do not have a farm to till, if you do not have a crop to pack or whatever sort, you have no other job then maybe. Then that's why that's your push factor to migrate. Where do you earn from? Now, because I mentioned cities, I'll come to the city part. That again, I'll cite stories from our portal that how this community remains vulnerable to climate shifts, even in the city. So they are escaping this drought condition, this water scarcity, which has wilted farms. They come to a city. What happens here? Is it all great? The wages are better in most cases, yes, which is why that's the biggest pull to migration. The wages are better, but how do they live? They live informally in tin shed roof structures. They work long hours. If you're a gig worker, you'll be out in the sun for longer. You're working in, like, your exposure to the heat or to any other climate extreme is far greater than that of a regular white collared or a formal sector worker. Now, when because I used formal sector here, we are all aware that a large part of India's workforce is informal. Of this informal, what do we mean by informal workforce? They do not have social security, fixed wages, fixed leaves, pension, nothing. You're just working for your daily wages or on a contractual basis. Maybe you're paid every 10 days, 20 days, or whatever, but there's no contract, there's nothing that allows, there's no grievance redressal mechanism if you have any trouble with your employer because you're an informal worker. So that almost 85 to 90% of India's workforce is considered to be informal. Of that, at least our estimate, there are various estimates, and in fact, we are putting out a video this month which looks at this aspect, that what exactly is the number of migrant workers in India. We work on the estimate of 140 million from researchers because that's what that I because there are different estimates in the economic survey and what researchers have put together. We've somehow stuck to 140 million. As researchers explained, it's the more realistic estimate. So that's 140 million people leaving their homes and working in cities. Can cities accommodate those numbers? Do they figure in your municipal corporation's housing plan, education plan, healthcare plan? None of that happens. In the absence of that, you are again most vulnerable to heat. If you fall sick, you do not have access to basic healthcare facilities. I'll cite two stories here. One is by Anumeha Yadav. She reported from a heat ward which was set up in Delhi hospital last year. That heat ward was set up because the temperature had been going up. The number of cases of heat stroke had been climbing. When she went to the heat ward, she found that most of the people admitted there were migrant workers. And here again was a story at the intersection of climate, heat, all of that. But what is the outcome? That you are the most impacted. How did that? So the workers there, one of the workers that she profiled, of course he couldn't speak to her, he was unconscious, but his friends told her, his fellow flatmates, or the room that they were sharing, they shared with her that he was working at a pizza delivery place. He was in charge of the oven, And in the Delhi heat, there was no exhaust fan. He was working the oven for 12 hours, 14 hours, and then coming back and sharing this room with other people and living there, and how this impacted him. And he fell unconscious on the day Delhi's temperature peaked. And that's how they had brought him. Anumeha only did another one which brought in the gender lens, which was about women and brickins. When you're baking bricks, this is now in the heat of summer, if you're baking bricks, it will be difficult for everyone. But how is it impacting women differently? It's the same human body, the man and the woman. But she found that the heat was impacting their pregnancies. The, the women who were pregnant at that time, they were uh, severely impacted. Plus, what was also happening is their access to healthcare. Now, there was a non-profit which had set up a camp for healthcare services for to check if any of these workers, as in it was in the vicinity, and it was free for the workers and go avail of that service. But the women wouldn't go. Why? Because A, it would mean loss of wages for that day's labor. B, it was too hot for them to walk to that center in their state. So so it's the same human body, man and woman, but the impact on a woman's body is far greater. There was another story from Bangalore by Amulya, which looked at how people living informally in the slum pocket of Bangalore. Now, there was this huge water scarcity fueled by heat waves there last year. And there was how again, like the water scarcity was making headlines at that time in Bangalore, that people were going to malls to take a shower. They were requesting to be like, they all wanted to work from office because there was no water at home, all of that. But what does all this mean to a person living in an informal settlement, in a tin roof or whatever? That they were getting a water tanker just once in 5 days or 6 days, which would mean they would stock up water, which would also mean that their vulnerability to disease and sickness was increasing because they were drinking water which was possibly not potable. And then there were doctors who weighed in on the subject. So again, it was like the heat, the common thread across all the stories is rising heat. That we are recording that the planet is getting warmer, it's becoming difficult for everyone to live, but it's much more difficult to live if you are a marginalized community. There's also, in terms of how we can integrate the gender angle when we are on the field, also requires, please interrupt if you have any questions, otherwise I can keep going on. So integrating the gender angle, one is of course looking at all these stories. Staying with the stories helps us understand the many layers that each story kind of reveals on its own. But at times, it also is a very conscious effort in a limited time to ensure that we have the gender element in our stories. Now, for example, when we go on the field, when we are visiting rural areas, it's typically men who would speak to you, would come when you are interviewing people. The men take the lead, they'll give you the information and all of that. And you have to keep asking, like the wall example that I gave you, the men kept saying, they were waxing eloquent about the wall, and they were very nicely explaining how this wall was their solution and all of that. And then it came much later, like after I kept persisting that who built the wall, how many men were involved, whatever, that it emerged it were the women of the village who built the wall. And why was that the case? Because most men migrate. They're not around for these mitigation solutions, right? So, so it takes time to unearth that. But at some times, because we are journalists, we are all fellow journalists, you might just agree with it that a lot of times when we approach a story with a non-profit, the story like imme- as in it's suddenly checking all your boxes, and that's also a red flag that too good to be true. As in it, it's understand that there's been a success or whatever. It's a nice case study, but too good to be true. And it's fine to push for the limitations of that, whatever, even if they are showcasing women, like, because we are talking gender, climate, livelihood, migration. So a lot of women are the solution creators in villages. Like I mentioned, the wall. But this one took time to reveal itself. Like, it took time. So there's also then some hope. Okay, this is not as in, there is indeed merit in putting the spotlight on their effort, because they didn't come readily to you and tell you about it. I did this or that. So there's a lot of merit because you spend time and labor to unearth that bit. But there, when it reveals itself too quickly, oh, the women did it, oh, they are great, or whatever. That does not mean that, oh, I've got a great gender story. Well, most of us are like experienced enough to know, okay, we'll kind of understand this better. So, for example, because a lot of solutions on climate are emerging from women, they are the ones who are left behind in villages. So, which is great, which is giving them a place of agency in their own village and giving them a place in positions of power as well. But it's also important to understand. So, a lot of self help groups are there in rural India, and which is facilitating easier intervention by the government and non-profits when they are going ahead with ideas such as climate resilient farming, or how do we store seeds, how do we identify crops that can withstand droughts and floods. All these initiatives are underway, and it will take time for them to take off at scale. But wherever they are taking off is because the women are involved. The women are organized, they are diligent, they pay attention, and they are the farm managers, because in most cases, like I said, men are away on the fields. So they are the climate, they are suffering the impact of climate, but they are also solution creators right now. But what does that responsibility come with? Is I think when we are looking at gender climate kind of stories, is very important to kind of pay a little more attention to the gender part, that it has that their solution creators is great, something to be celebrated. But at the same time, it's important to understand what is their earning from it, not just financial, but in terms of rights. Has it won them a land right? Are these because they are better equipped to handle climate resilient farming? Is it giving them a better say in farm ownership documents? Most of the land is owned by men. So is it translating into rights as well? That's one thing. And what is the limitation of these solutions? Because in a lot of cases, the women are implementing solutions. They are not the decision makers. The men could be away, possibly in a mine or a construction site, but they continue to take decisions. So are they the decision makers as well? Are they emerging as decision makers? There was a story from Uttarakhand by Isha Roy, which we carried and which looked at where they are emerging as decision makers, where thousands of women are now panchayat heads because all the men have migrated, and which has given them great power. So, credit where it's due, but does not limit us from exposing the limitations of these success stories where women are doing well. And even when we are documenting the challenges of women, that's also possibly an opportunity for us to look at the bigger subject. Like one story, not from the migration story, but from another portal, was on which I had done, was on women mortgaging their gold to buy fodder. Now that was a huge catch line, and I was like, wow, that's a story waiting to be told. But it took me to another dimension. Like, the the entry to the story was that this woman sold her gold, mortgaged her gold, because fodder is too expensive. Then what's the next layer? Why is fodder expensive? Then the next layer, because cash crops are predominantly covering more farms. Why did that happen? Then you come to the climate shift, which has led to all of that. So once you uncover, and then what has happened to India's grazing land, India's commons, all of that, then the conversation zooms out to commons. So again, all of these stories that I've mentioned are at the intersection of gender, climate, livelihood, women's rights, all of that. Each story is an opportunity to zoom out and focus on that one theme that we feel is under reported and as is about a voiceless community. Now, whether uh, it could be the voiceless community of women who've built a wall, or the voiceless community of men who've migrated because they've not found brides. But they all together tell a bigger story of a region, of a problem, which remains unaddressed. And this is our endeavor, all of us on this call. Our endeavor always is to, like, we are messengers, right? As journalists, we are messengers. And my colleague used to say this, and she had read it in a book, that when you go to a village, don't go to the heart of the village, go to its margins. So that's where the stories come from. So, which is true for all our stories as well, that we hit the heart of the story, but it's great to kind of travel to the margins of the story, so that to the of that particular issue, the margins of an issue, things that are seemingly invisible, but that's where I think our real stories come from. I'll pause there. I spoke for a bit. If you have questions, I'm happy to take them.
Do we have any questions, members? So Mohsina is asking, maybe Roli can just see the chat. She is asking a question.
So basically, Rodney, my question is like, whenever we pitch migration stories to various publications, like if you remember, I had pitched a story to you, but that was not specific to migration. We had to look for the migration angle in that. I want to know, like, if we are pitching a migration story to a publication, what they look for and how we can figure out this is a migration story we are doing, and how we can intersect that with climate, with health, with maybe financial security, or maybe social security, or what kind of stories, I mean, what kind of things an editor see in a story, or maybe in the pitch. Because most of the time, either the editors don't respond to the pitch, and you have to keep following up, and then you don't get a response. And sometimes they are timely stories, and then there's no point of an editor accepting that story.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Mohsina, where are you based?
I am currently based in Delhi. I have been in
Delhi.
Delhi from last 3 4 years now.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm based in Delhi. Basically, I'm from Srinagar, Kashmir only, but
Okay.
right now I'm in Delhi.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
No, thanks for the question. I think uh, I can't speak for other portals. At the migration story, if it's a ground report, we look for ground reports under our reportage section. If you go to our site, Musina, you'll see all the stories are ground reports where the reporter has gone to the field and done those stories. That's one. Second is it should touch upon, as in the reason why we are doing the story is because it's looking at a migrant community or a community that is potentially going to migrate, or those who've already migrated. So it could be source, destination, or in the process. So all that. And we will look for a clear why now element. Like, why are we doing this story now? What is the reason for us to report on this now? If we can answer that in a couple of sentences, that would be great. That this is the idea, this is the reason why I want to do it, and this would be the timeline or whatever. Now, regarding editors not responding on time, guilty as charged. But must say here, and this is a request to, or if this recording goes to other journalists as well, that please be patient. We are running a very small organization, and it looks small.
Ronnie, I'm not particularly targeting you here. There are
No, no,
certain
no,
publications who I'm talking about.
that's fine. I'm
Yeah.
just using the opportunity. I'm
Yeah, yeah.
using your question as an opportunity to make a broader point that we take time to respond to pitches. And like I said, guilty as charged. And we've lost some good stories for that reason. And but there's no other way I could have done it better. Where we may be producing a lot of stories. I don't know what's the impression going out there, but the hands behind the whatever are not as many. So, which means we are like multitasking all the time or whatever. We try very hard to respond to pitches as soon as we can, both Anuradha and I try and revert, but it takes time. So, I would like a little more empathy from journalists who are reaching out to editors. We became editors later. We are all fellow journalists. So let's just be a bit more empathetic towards each other, that they must be having something, like there's no reason for us to dismiss a good story idea. So it's in our interest to respond to these pitches on time. If we are unable to do so, it's because of certain constraints, right? Time constraints. The certain is means time. That time is a luxury. So as fellow journalists, let's just understand we are just inhabiting different spaces right now. But we all remain journalists at heart. But Mosina, I hope I answered your question on what we are looking for in pitches.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
There has
yeah.
to be an element of migration. There has to be an element of why now. Though I say that energy transition and climate change are our focus areas, they are our focus areas. But we've looked at migration through the lens of Aishwarya's just done a two-part series on caste fueling migration. We've done migration through the lens of education, health. Right now, you're in Delhi, and the one thing, if we had the time and like we didn't plan ahead, was Purvanchal vote in Delhi, right? It voted in on the 5th, and the Purvanchal vote was like the big talking point that it would swing the results. So it would have been nice to get something like that, like something that's topical. So you're checking the why now box immediately that it's Delhi elections, and I'm looking at the Purvanchal vote and how it will impact or whatever. So that's a huge yes, immediate or whatever. The
Yeah,
other,
but as there
yeah,
were reports, a lot of people were not able to vote in Delhi who are migrants and who had their
correct.
voting cards based in here. And they were
Yeah,
like, if we have been
I
living
think
here for 20,
scrolled
30,
at that.
40 years, but how our names were not in the list. So a
Yeah.
lot of migrants missed the chance to vote in Delhi this time.
Correct, correct. So
Yeah.
that too, absolutely. I think scrolled at that, and also there was this, because people had been evicted from place A to B or whatever, they had possibly their names fell off the charts. Was that also the case?
We don't know what were the reasons exactly behind that, like why their names were not in the list, as there are a lot of demolitions going on in certain areas of Delhi
Correct,
NCR. So maybe there's a shift. I mean, people are moving from here and there. Some are living on roadsides or either
correct,
setting up their tents, and maybe
correct.
they didn't go to the place where their list would have came. So
Yeah.
they might have misplaced somewhere.
Also,
So
it's
like,
like, yeah, digital disconnect also, right? A lot of
hmm,
check our names on the voter list ahead of the voting day on online. But what
hmm.
to do if you do not even know what that website is, or you don't know how to access that? How do we, like we do, like we know how to use the system, they don't. So there is also a digital disconnect there. But yeah, these are all stories that would work for us. Yeah. And
Like I remember
yeah.
doing the story from Kashmir for Boom Life last year. It was about like how just a 16-kilometer away village, not I would say village, is Badgam, which is just 16 kilometer away from Srinagar, and the people have to migrate from there to Srinagar for what? Just for network, because there are two villages.
Hmm.
One side of village have internet and other side of village don't have an internet, and
Yeah.
now they come to a point where there's a tree where they come, they sit and they study, they download their things,
And then they,
and then they go back to their village. And most of the youth have shifted to Srinagar for what? Because they were not able to get their exam, they were not able to
yeah,
see for their updates. And
that's
most of the
such a lovely
like,
story.
I mean, that's like even one side of area have internet, other side of don't have an internet. I was like, how it is possible? And it's a very, I mean, it's shocking for me to just like, it's just 16 kilometers away from Srinagar.
Correct. No, that's
Yeah, it was
he's
on Boom Live I did. I mean, I was like कि मतलब इतना problem है लोगों में, and even if they
correct.
have been demanding like these uh, tower heads and everything कि
Correct.
please we will give you our land, please install a tower over here, we need access. And now, even if there's a death in the area, they have to
Right.
announce that in the mosque कि हमारे यहाँ पे ऐसे किसी का डेथ हुआ है, please come for a funeral or something, because they don't have a connectivity over there and they can't call
Correct,
anybody.
correct, correct,
I
correct.
mean, I was shocked to see that.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so like that's if you've already done it, it's all like it's a story that's checking all our boxes. Like when these data packs, the charges for data packs went up, right? Like people who use prepaid phones, the data prices went up last year. And there was a story from Bangalore, I think, yeah, Bangalore. It appeared on our site that how migrant workers they use these prepaid packs and they pay for the same for their families as well. It's their only gateway, leisure gateway, playing a game, watching a YouTube video after a long day at work. And now it was so expensive that they were unable to do that. So it's just like something that's in the news. And how would it impact the poorest? Like I said, like going to the margins. But these internet migrants is like a lovely story. And yeah, so if you come across more such, Mosina, you know where to pitch us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
surely, surely.
Mm.
I have a story from Sivan, by the way. So it's about
Okay.
migration only. Like,
Okay.
yeah, I would pitch that to you. I have a story
Please
from
do.
Sivan.
Please
And I
do.
have one more from this Mirzapur. I
Okay.
recently went to Mirzapur for a workshop. So I
Okay.
came across a story over there. That there are these things happening in Mirzapur. I mean, what is shown in that series, Mirzapur is very different from that. It's whole tribal area.
Right, right, right. Sure, please do send your pictures. And my only whatever would be if it's a ground report, we'll typically need pictures with the stories. And if you have applied for grants, fellowships, all of that, we are happy to give you. If you are planning to apply, we are happy to give you letters of support. So that because we understand all these stories take time and are labor intensive. So if you have somebody backing your app, like some you have an avenue to get funding from that, we'll still pay a reporting fee. But it also helps you as a journalist to get paid better if you have a fellowship or a grant.
Roli, I also have few two questions, but before that, Meghna is asking, how do we pitch stories to the migration story?
You can send it in your network. I'll share the pitch email, as in the email we use for pitches. That's the migration story at gmail.com. That's for all pitches, the migration story at gmail.com.
Sure. So
Yeah.
there is another question asking, this Hebza is asking, she's like, do you think the plight or status of migrants being deported back home from US would be interesting?
Yes, it would be. I'm right now on the fence. Do you want to do it? Who's asking me this
Yeah,
question?
Hebza Anthony. She's there. Hebza, are you there?
Hepsi. Yeah, yeah, of course, Hepsi, I know. Hi, Hepsi. Thanks for.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah,
Uh,
yes, I I'm hugely interested in that. But like I said, a little on the fence on the illegal migration right now. Whether it's something for us. But when I was reading the reports this morning of the people from the villages that they're from in Indian Express, I thought it would be good to explore why this village is like, what are the reasons? Like now that they've come back, we all have seen those visuals, all of that. We've kind of read what the routes that they took and like their arduous journey. But why? As in, what were the factors that influenced the decision to spend 35 lakh to 1 crore rupees and to undertake this journey? That was something. But like I said, I'm still a bit on the fence on the illegal migration one, because right now we're looking at migration as in the regular migration corridors and not illegal as yet. But it's a fine, whatever thing. I will come back to you, Hepsi, on that. Hmm.
no, I was just generally asking whether, whether
No,
because
it is of
that,
great interest. I've been reading it myself with great interest to understand, like, maybe it's one for us. Like, I strongly feel it is. But because it's illegal migration, it becomes like there are more dimensions to it than what we are covering right now. Yeah.
So yeah, Roli, I would like to ask you, like at the migration story, what strategies do you use to ensure that your reporting reaches and resonates with the communities you cover?
Yeah.
And another question would be, how do we stay informed and up to date about the latest scientific research and policy developments related to these intersections like migration, gender, and climate?
Okay, like the low-hanging fruit answer for the second question is Google Alerts, like big so that it kind of keeps you posted on every gender and climate research that pops up on the internet. Like the minute it's published, it's there, you get an alert. But having said that, a lot of this comes from following the right people on various social media platforms, the right organizations, and so many of them doing such incredible work. So it makes great sense to follow all of them and then engaging with the researchers, whoever is a researcher on gender, climate, livelihoods, and climate, or whatever. It's great to make connections with those people, introducing ourselves to them, which is what we all do. One second. Which is what we all do, that we introduce ourselves. But even when there is no story looming or whatever, but just introducing ourselves to them, like how we do on a beat. Like when we are on a new beat, we go and tell all the officials that, hey, I'm the new person covering this beat or whatever. In this case, it's more with the research community, the think tank community. And there are some, like, say, for example, climate trends and all, that also connect you with a lot of scientists and researchers. So if you're on their mailing list, it's great. It's a great resource because they connect you with people who are talking about what's latest or what's important, or they're also guiding you to the latest research which has appeared somewhere. So there are these organizations. The idea is to just keep following them on various platforms, connecting with them, connecting with the researchers, and telling them that if they do come up, if they are doing a research themselves, or if they're coming out with one uh, in the near future, or if they know of others who are, you'd be very interested to explore that. At the migration story, we also accept those pitches. If you're looking at a bunch of research papers, or like two or three, and analyzing it in a layperson's language, the language that you and I are speaking in right now. Instead of making it academic and very heavy, we try to kind of, so what does it mean? So this is, okay, Hepsi's asked a question. I'll come to it, Hepsi. If this is the research that has just been published. Like, for example, we did an explainer, which was a video explainer featuring Roxy Matthew Cole, the climate scientist. He's brilliant. And the research was on the warming seas and the drop in fish volumes, all of that. And he broke it down totally. And we had a researcher and a journalist collaborate on that video story. So because researchers will write like researchers do, we as journalists know how to kind of, bring in the regular language that readers will understand. So we did that as a collaboration, a researcher, a journalist, and the scientist, all three, using all three to tell that. So we accept those pitches too. Exploring the deep thing. And if you can interview with that researcher and pitch it to us as an analysis, we are happy to take that. Does that answer you? There are
Yeah.
many other resources. You must follow something called Climate Resilience for All. My former editor, Lori, she is the Rising Heat editor there. And they have good resources too over there in terms of reporting on things that we need to be mindful of, etc. So it's a great tool. Even the GIJN, a lot of you will be on the GIJN network. Even they have great tools for that. Yeah. And Hepsi, regarding the Google Alert, um, one second, on the Google Alert, how does one go about it to receive it? Okay. Uh, it's not too difficult when you, I'll have to think, but just when you you'll see, or just Google, create Google Alert Hepsi. You are logged in to your Gmail. When you open another tab and say create a Google Alert, and then it's then like just checking boxes, writing the keywords. It's just how you do a Google search, right? That let's say gender and climate, and then all this research will pop up or some story will pop up. That pop-up will go directly to your inbox. So anything on those keywords that has appeared on the internet will come to to your inbox. You can set the frequency, whether you want that information every day, or whether you want it immediately, or whether you are okay getting all this information in a bulletin form once in a week. So it comes in various forms. Any other question?
Roli, I had asked the question like, what strategies do you use to ensure that your reporting reads and resonates with the communities
Oh,
you
yeah, that's an important question. That's an absolutely important question. One of our endeavors has been, and thanks for asking that. One of our endeavors has been to get our stories translated and getting them published on other sites. So, for example, the Wire Hindi and India Spent Hindi have carried our stories in Hindi. So, the story appears in English on our site and in Hindi on their site. And then it's circulated. We circulated with the people that we have spoken to. So, whether it was the Brickin series that we did from Uttar Pradesh, and in fact, it came from the community only. We shared the reporters who had done the Brickin story, they shared it with the people they had interviewed, and they said the pictures look great. How do we read it? So then we got it translated. We reached out to India Spend, and they translated it, they published it, and then we sent it to the people. And then that got us going. So each time we think there is a story that would merit greatly from the community readership, we are doing that. We want to do that as in one of our long-term aims, of course, is to be a bilingual, and not just bilingual, to be a platform in other languages as well, particularly from Eastern India, because that's where a lot of migrant community comes from. But that requires considerable planning and scale. But yeah, but also the videos, we never muffle or never dwarf the original audio. In all our video stories, if the person is speaking in Odia, Hindi, Telugu, whatever the languages, we retain that, but we give subtitles so that the original audio is, there's no English dubbing of the audio. We retain the original, and which again is to ensure that the people who've been featured in those videos and their communities, they are able to watch it and even understand what is being said. But yes, it's very important. Also, we are again, one of our projects is barefoot journalism project, which we are working on, and that's very important for us, because we are trying to enlist people who may not have the training of a journalist but aspire to be journalists, and are from the communities that we are focusing on, and we hope to engage with them to tell their own stories. We did that with one video story, which was from the sugarcane cutters of Marathwada. The women recorded their own videos, showed their living conditions. These were migrant sugarcane workers on the fields of Marathwada. They shot their videos, they did everything. We just got it edited for it to meet our style. We retained their voice, we retained their footage, everything. We just kind of gave it a format. So we want to do more of that, so that the community that we are focusing on is not only featured but is part of featuring themselves. They're able to kind of shine a light on their own challenges and solutions, possibly on their own, as against us going and like doing it. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions, any other query, or anyone can share insights, experiences if they like?
Hi. Um, So I am currently a journalism student, so I don't know much about the field as such. But I am from Uttarakhand, and I remember of something like while listening to migration stories and such, that जब हम न्यू टीरी जाते हैं तो न्यू टीरी इज वेरी पॉपुलेटेड, वेरी डेंसली पॉपुलेटेड, एंड बट जैसे हम न्यू टीरी से ऊपर की तरफ जाते हैं देन वी सी कि वहाँ पे पॉपुलेशन थोड़ी थोड़ी कम होने लग जाती है। बीच बीच में शहर के इलाके पड़ेंगे वहाँ पे होती है एंड देन वापस कम होने लग जाती है। बट द थिंग इज कि जो उत्तरकाशी की डिस्ट्रिक्ट है वहां पे भी सी कि देयर आर स्टिल पीपल लिविंग, और वहां पे पलायन का इतना बड़ा प्रॉब्लम एज सच क्रिएट नहीं हुआ है।
Nice.
This I noticed when I was there last time, and one of my relatives who lived there only mentioned कि यहाँ पे बहुत चल रहा है। They were like criticizing while we were driving upwards up hills, so he was criticizing कि यहाँ पे पलायन हो रहा है, ये लोग जमीन बेच रहे हैं नीचे के लोगों को और बहुत इससे डिस्टरबेंस हो रहा है। बट
क्या
व्हेन वी
disturbance हो रहा है?
उत्तरकाशी, they were like उत्तरकाशी में नहीं हो रहा है, एंड इट इज काइंड ऑफ सरप्राइजिंग कि ऐसा क्यों है, क्यों वहीं नहीं हो रहा है।
Okay. Aditi, where are you doing your journalism, you said?
Currently I am in New Delhi.
Okay. No, sounds interesting कि हर जगह हो रहा है, एक जगह नहीं हो रहा है. But I'll need to, as in, it needs more digging, right? To understand that better. And one is like observational information that, okay, we observe this is happening. The other is if it is coming, if it is being corroborated by government records or maybe a local organization that's looking at migration or something. If it comes from that place, then we are sure, okay, there is indeed a pattern. We try and steer clear of that. This is like an observation of people that comes later. We'll the observations, but we focus like the only way it can be a story is if there is official corroboration of this is happening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, okay, if we do not have further questions, I'd like to end up this call. Thank you so much, Roli, for your time and everyone sharing your expertise and insights on this critical intersection of migration, climate change, and gender. I hope that this will be an ongoing process, and those who would like to pitch to Migration Story can reach out to them. And yeah, thank you so much. I hope I encourage everyone to continue exploring these topics and apply, what we have learned in our in today's session. And do not hesitate to reach out to Roli or WFC for any follow-up questions. Thank you so much, Roli. I really appreciate your time, to joining this training, and we hope everyone you found this valuable. So yeah, have a productive day, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Subscribe for more content.